Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to remove the front tire of a 1700 Yamaha Silverado. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification button. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is take off the calipers. So there's two 12mm bolts holding each one on. One's down low, easy to see, and then the other one's tucked up in behind the reflector. Right up in here. Once they're loosened off, you can just take them out by hand. And when you have your calipers off, that's a really good time to check your brakes and lubricate your calipers and your sliders. So I'm just going to let that hang there. I'm going to put the one bolt back in. And the other bolt is kind of held in place with the reflector. So we're not going to worry about that one at the moment. And now we're going to go to the left side of the bike, and it's going to be the same thing. Alright, and now we're going to go back to the right side of the bike to loosen off the axle shaft. So before you start loosening off the axle, there is, right on the front of the fork, there's an Allen key right there. You got to take out, and then you're able to take out the axle. The Allen key is a 6mm. Get on it and loosen it off, and then pull it all the way out. There it is. So I usually just use the wrench that comes with the bike. It's a 22mm if you need to use a socket or a bigger wrench. And then once I get it moving, I lower the bike back down just because it's easier to manhandle the tire. I'm going to get the front wheel so it's just kind of touching the ground, and I find that takes a lot of the weight off the axle and makes it a little bit easier for us to pull it out. And now as you can see, the bike is supported just by this stand, and the front tire is loose. So when you get the shaft out, there's going to be two spacers, one on each side of the wheel. And as I start jacking it up, they might stay with the wheel or they might fall out, but just keep in mind that there are two spacers there that you don't want to lose. So now I'll bring the bike back up. Now we should be able to just wheel the wheel ahead and out of the way. And with the wheel up here, these are those spacers that I'm talking about. There's one on each side of the wheel. There's a flange that sticks out. You can see it on this side here. That points out towards the forks, and the inner part, the narrower part, slips in around the seal. Alright, next step is getting the front wheel on. So there's a direction arrow on your wheels. You want to make sure you have it pointing towards the front or the direction of rotation. So looking on here, the arrow is right there pointing that way. So if the wheel's spinning like this, because the ground's going behind you, so the front of your wheel's going forward, so it's pointing forward. So front of the bike's like that. That's how it's going to be oriented. I also kept my axle going through the same way, so I would know which way orientation was. This is kind of a little double checker. I've also taped everything on here. I have all my parts. I can take the tape off now. So this is the pinch bolt for once we get the axle in and torqued up. So I'm just going to set that off to the side. And that's the axle. I'm just going to put that down. I'm going to clean up a little bit of the grease off of the spacers. I'm going to put some fresh grease on everything to lubricate it as it goes through. Keeps it from rusting and just keeps lubrication everywhere. So with the spacers, the fatter part of the collar, it sticks out towards the fork, and the smaller part slips in onto the seal. Both spacers are the same size, but I try to keep them on the side that they came from, even though they're identical. Now I'm just cleaning any old grease or dirt away from the seal before we put fresh grease in. Alright, now I'm going to make sure my hands don't have any dirt or anything on them. I'm going to put some lubrication with the grease gun inside. Just do a couple pumps on my finger and I just kind of work it in a little bit. It's good for the seal, it gives lubrication on it so it doesn't get hot and rip. And one thing with the grease, it also helps to keep your spacers in when you're kind of moving things around, lining everything up. So I'm going to take my spacer and I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on there, inside and out. And slip it in. And then same thing with the other side. You don't need very much grease for these. And when I put them in, they just slip right in. They only go in so far and then that's it. We'll wipe some of the grease off our hands. Grab the axle. We're going to clean this up a bit too. Make sure there's no dirt or debris on it. And I'm going to lubricate this as well. I'm only going to lubricate the first little bit of it, and then once I get it in and started, as I go in further, I keep lubricating back, otherwise it's just way too messy. I'm using marine grease on this stuff. I usually use whatever grease I have kicking around, as long as it's not winter grease. But this is just what I have in this grease gun. My other grease gun has winter grease in it for the snow machine still. So I'm going to use this. It's a little bit better anyways with water and everything. It sticks a little better. So I'm just going to do just part of it like that so I still have a cleanish area to grab and kind of work it in. And now I'm going to lower the bike down close to the same height as this. So we'll just kind of be careful as we go down. We need the wheel in the fender area, but we don't want to have the weight of the bike come down on parts that's not supposed to. We gotta jack it up to release the safety. Safety's off. Now we can slowly lower it down. Using these style jacks, you have to remember that as you lower down, the bike's not coming straight down, it's actually moving linearly to the side. So you just kind of slowly move your tire and go nice and slow. And I'm going to readjust the bottom of the tire, I find that works the best. And then you're going to come down some more. I'm going to recheck everything out. Up a little better. And down some more. Very close there. I'm actually just a hair too low, I think. So I'm just gonna go up just a little bit. And we're lined up pretty close with their spacers to where they should be. So now we can start to try to get the axle shaft in. I usually sit right in front of the bike and kind of manhandle. I'm going to try to stay off the side so I can show a little bit more. But I just take it in. It goes in from the right hand side, and you can tell that because on the left hand fork leg it's all threads in there and there's no place for a pinch bolt on it. And then on the right side, this hole right here, that's where our pinch bolt goes in to pinch and cinch it so the shaft can't come loose. We're just going to slowly work it in. Now we're going to apply a little more grease. I'm going to take some of the excess that's there so we're not so wasteful. Put a little bit of that on. I'm going to grab a little bit more. I'm going to grab a smaller ratchet. This is a little bit long if it's binding it. I'm going to use a smaller one just so I can kind of feel it start. Everything feels good. It almost wants to go by itself. So that's how, so you can tell for sure it's not cross-threaded or anything. Sucking itself in. And the torque spec for that is 56 foot-pounds. So I'm going to start at 30 foot-pounds and work my way up. Now I'm going to go to 40. And I'm going to go to 50. And 56, I believe. Yep, 56. We'll loosen this off. And now our next step is to put the pinch bolt in. I'm going to wipe some of this grease up too. You can also see that the tip of the shaft is just slightly protruding past the fork, so we know we got full thread engagement. You can kind of see it just sticking past there. Alright, so now the pinch bolt, it just goes right in. We'll raise this up a bit so you can see better. And we'll lower it down to the lockers. Alright, so now we'll put the pinch bolt in. It's just a 6 mil, and the axle nut, it was a 22 mil. So the pinch bolt, it torques down to 14 foot-pounds. So you multiply by 12 to get it into inch-pounds. It works out to 168, so I'm going to go to 170 inch-pounds. Alright, so I'm going to go up to 110 inch-pounds now. Now 130. Now 150. 160. I'm going to go 165. And I'm going to go 170. Alright. So the front wheel is fully installed, so it can't back off. Now our last step is to get the caliper on the bike. But before we do that, I'm going to get some brake cleaner on a rig. And I'm going to clean up the rotor at the same time before I put it on. This way there's no contaminants or anything. So I'm going to put my glove back on. I'm going to grab a clean rag. And I'm just going to kind of soak it. So it's nice and wet. And then I'm going to wrap it around the rotor and I'm just going to spin the tire. As you can see, it was fairly dirty. So I'm going to turn my rig inside out and I'm going to do it again. And that's better. And I'm going to take a clean dry rig and I'm going to get any last residue off. Nice and clean. Now I'll pull my caliper bolts out. There's one, and there's two. Alright, and now we're just going to slip it on. And we're going to slip the bolts back in. They still have quite a bit of never sees from the last time I had them off. So I'm just going to slip them on without never seizing them. So I like to get one in, and then I get the top one in. I usually don't take the top one all the way out because the reflector is kind of a pain. But in this case, I had everything all apart and I didn't take it all the way, I didn't put it back on before I put the reflector on. Then we're going to grab a 12 mil and we'll tighten them up. And then the torque specs on these are 29 foot-pounds. But you can't actually get a torque wrench on the top one with a reflector here, so I always just go with the wrench and make sure that they're tight. And then usually I'll double check them periodically just to make sure everything is still okay. Perfect. I'm not going to show doing the other side because it's identical to this side, just mirror image. But once you get both on, you want to grab your brake and you want to pump it up until you feel brake pressure. Because if you just jump on and start riding and you go to hit the brakes, there's a good chance you'll have no brakes there, especially if you compress the pistons, because they might take 5 or 10 pumps before they move back to the rotor. And one other thing you want to check too, when you're doing your brakes, you want to check for any excessive wear or tear on the rotors, because if there is you'll have to change them eventually. So it's something to keep an eye on. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification button. Check me out on Instagram at Cargo Garage. See you next time.